Denver, Colorado, January 6, 2016. The wind screamed like something alive. It clawed at the hospital windows, a white blur of fury that erased the city beyond. Snow hammered the emergency bay doors as the night shift dragged into its 16th hour. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. Monitors beeped in chaotic harmony. The ER smelled of bleach, coffee, and desperation. Dr. Elise Moran pressed her palm to her temple, squinting at the triage board. 3 car accidents. 1 frostbite amputation. A hypothermic child en route from Boulder. Her pulse thudded behind her eyes, but she forced herself to focus. Dr. Moran, the charge nurse called. Room 12's coding again. She turned sharply. Get me epinephrine. 2 milligrams. Push it. The crash cart rattled in beside her. The patient, a middle-aged man with cardiac arrest, lay motionless. Elise's breath fogged her face shield as she began compressions. 30, breathe, 30, breathe, her world narrowing to the rhythm of pressure and silence. After the 3rd shock, the monitor beeped weakly. The man gasped. Alive. Barely. Elise exhaled, the adrenaline shaking her hands. Stabilize him. I'm going to check 409. She didn't say the name, but everyone knew who lay in room 409. The patient had arrived 2 weeks ago, under a pseudonym, escorted by military personnel with unmarked badges. Head trauma, memory gaps, no ID. But what disturbed Elise most wasn't his condition, it was Dr. Graham Keller's secrecy. He had restricted access to 409, claiming the man was part of a psychiatric trauma study. Elise had been Keller's protégé once, when she was still an RN chasing her PA license. He was brilliant, persuasive, and ruthless when crossed. Now, he had drawn her into something she didn't fully understand. When she pushed open the door to 409, the lights were dim. The patient sat up, whispering something rhythmic, his eyes open but unfocused. The heart monitor kept a slow, steady beat. Mr. Cole? Elise said softly. He didn't react. She stepped closer, clipboard in hand. The man's lips moved faster now. A mantra? A countdown? She leaned in, and froze. He was saying her name. Elise Moran. Elise Moran. Her heart stopped cold. How do you know me? He turned his head slowly, pupils dilated like ink. He told me to tell you, he rasped. Don't trust him. The chart is frozen. What chart? But he was already trembling violently, his voice disintegrating into nonsense. Elise rushed to the intercom. I need Dr. Keller in 409 now. Within moments, Keller strode in, his white coat perfectly pressed despite the chaos. He smiled thinly. Everything under control? No, Elise snapped. He's saying my name. He shouldn't even know it. What have you done to him? Keller glanced at the patient, expression unreadable. Hallucinations are a common post-trauma response. Nothing unusual. Then why is his file password locked? Why can't I access his labs? He turned to her, voice suddenly hard. Because this isn't your concern, Elise. You're here to assist, not to pry. Her jaw tightened. He's a patient, not a prototype. Something flickered behind his eyes, a flash of warning, or guilt. Go home, Elise. You're exhausted. You're starting to see ghosts. She wanted to shout at him, to demand answers, but the room tilted slightly. She realized she hadn't eaten in 16 hours. Her fingers trembled. Keller softened. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow. Elise bit back her anger. Fine. Tomorrow. She turned and walked out, her boots squeaking on the linoleum. But her mind churned. The chart is frozen. The phrase lodged itself in her brain, refusing to melt away. By the time she changed out of her scrubs, the blizzard had turned the parking lot into a white wasteland. The wind howled across the asphalt, swallowing every sound. Her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. He knows. Don't come back. She froze. Her throat went dry. She looked around the empty lot, nothing but snow and shadow. She texted back, "Who is this?" No response. She pocketed the phone and climbed into her Subaru, brushing frost from the windshield. The defroster groaned. Through the fogged glass, the ER's glowing entrance looked distant, almost unreal. Her mind replayed the patient's whisper, Keller's expression, the locked file. The text message. The sense of being watched. She told herself she was being paranoid. Lack of sleep. Too many night shifts. That's what Keller would say. Still, as she pulled onto I-70, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The snow thickened. Visibility dropped to near zero. Her headlights caught swirling ghosts of ice. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. If you remember, you'll die. Her heart thudded. The car veered slightly. She gripped the wheel tighter, eyes wide. "Who is this?" she whispered aloud, as if someone could answer. A shadow flickered across the road, a figure in white? A reflection? She slammed the brakes, tires skidding on the ice. The car spun once, twice, then stopped with a crunch against a snowbank. Silence. Her pulse roared in her ears. She checked herself, no injuries. She grabbed her phone, but the screen had gone black. Outside, the wind moaned like a living thing. "Elise." She froze. The voice came from outside the car. She turned slowly. Through the whiteout, she thought she saw someone standing a few feet away, tall, motionless, face hidden by snow. "Elise," the voice said again. Male. Familiar. She fumbled for the door handle. "Dr. Keller?" No answer. When she stepped out, the cold hit her like a blade. Her boots sank deep into snow. The figure was gone. Only the storm remained. Elise Moran vanished sometime between 1 o'clock and 2 a.m., the Denver police report would later read. Vehicle located 5 miles west of Denver General. Driver missing. Stethoscope recovered nearby, frozen in the snow. But that came later. For now, there was only white, endless, merciless white, and the faint echo of her name dissolving into the storm. Denver, Colorado, February 2016. The snow had melted, but the mystery had not. Detective Lena Price stood in the hospital's underground parking lot, squinting at the frost-streaked Subaru. It had been dragged from the snowbank 2 weeks after Elise Moran vanished, doors locked, keys still in the ignition, driver's seat empty. She tapped her pen against her notepad. No footprints, no blood, no signs of struggle. Just a stethoscope frozen into the snow like an offering. Beside her, the crime scene tech shrugged. "If you ask me, the storm took her." That night, the wind chill was 20 below. People panic, run for help, get disoriented. Lena cut him off. People don't text cryptic warnings before freezing to death. The tech raised an eyebrow. Text? Lena held up the case file. Her phone was recovered in the car. Dead battery, but forensics pulled the last 2 messages. She flipped the page and read aloud. "He knows. Don't come back. If you remember, you'll die." The words hung in the air like breath in cold air. Inside Denver General, the corridors buzzed with the low-level chaos of a hospital that never slept. Doctors brushed past detectives as if they were an inconvenience, not an investigation. Lena, a former nurse herself, had learned to read the difference between clinical calm and guilty silence. She found Dr. Graham Keller in the staff lounge, stirring his coffee like it had personally wronged him. "Detective Price," he said, looking up with a practiced smile. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Lena sat across from him, uninvited. "You worked with Elise Moran. She was one of our physician assistants. Talented. Overworked. You know how it is." Apparently, she was also involved in something called Project IDOS. The spoon stopped mid-stir. Keller blinked once. "I'm not familiar with that term." Lena smiled slightly. "Funny. Because her personnel file had a sticky note attached that said, IDOS, ask Keller." He recovered quickly. "Detective, we conduct multiple research projects here, most of which are confidential. It's possible she misinterpreted something." "You're saying she was unstable?" Keller spread his hands, perfectly measured. "I'm saying exhaustion does strange things to people. She worked double shifts for months. She lost her brother a few years ago, didn't she? Sometimes trauma finds its own way back." Lena leaned forward. "Was room 409 part of your research?" That got his attention. A flicker of something, not fear exactly, but irritation. "Who told you about 409? "Hospital records. They stop abruptly on the night she disappeared. Every other patient file is intact. That one? Corrupted. System glitch." "Of course," Lena said dryly. "And the patient listed as John Cole?" "Deceased," Keller said smoothly. "Heart failure. Nothing suspicious." Convenient. He met her gaze. Detective, I suggest you focus your investigation on the weather, not my work. We both know what Denver blizzards can do. Lena stood. Oh, I intend to. But blizzards don't send text messages, Dr. Keller. As she left, she could feel his eyes on her back, sharp, calculating. That evening, she sat in her apartment surrounded by files, coffee cups, and post-it notes. Elise's face stared up from a missing persons poster, brown hair, warm eyes, confident smile. Lena flipped through her hospital evaluations. Stellar marks. No disciplinary issues. But tucked in the back of the file was a single unsigned note written in looping handwriting. She's asking questions about IDOS again. She doesn't understand what's at stake. If she pushes harder, she'll get herself hurt. The timestamp was 2 days before Elise vanished. Lena picked up her phone and called the hospital's data administrator. I need every backup log from the week of January 6th. Patient records, internal emails, digital audits, everything. The voice on the other end hesitated. Detective, that data's encrypted. Some of it's classified under federal partnership agreements. Then call whoever you need to call, she said. Because if someone's experimenting on staff or patients, that's not classified, that's criminal. 2 days later, Lena met Dr. Maya Chen, a junior resident who'd worked under Elise. They met off-site, in a diner off Colfax, where the smell of bacon overpowered the fear of being overheard. I shouldn't be talking to you, Maya whispered, eyes darting to the door. They made us sign NDAs. Who's they? Lena asked. Maya hesitated. Keller. And 2 men in suits who said they were from IDOS Therapeutics. Private neuroscience firm out of Boulder. What were they doing in a public hospital? They were funding Keller's research. Something about memory stabilization for trauma patients. Elise was against it, said it wasn't healing, it was erasing. Erasing what? Memories, Maya said. They called it selective cognitive isolation. It was supposed to help soldiers forget traumatic events. But it worked too well. One subject forgot his entire identity. When Elise found out, she flipped. Lena's pulse quickened. Did she threaten to report it? Maya nodded. She told Keller she'd go to the medical board. That night, she stayed late to print the files. Then, the blizzard hit. Lena exhaled slowly. And Project IDOS? Every record vanished the next morning. Even the server backups. Like it never existed. That night, Lena returned to the hospital under the pretense of reviewing CCTV footage. Instead, she followed her gut. She found herself outside room 409, now sealed and labeled maintenance storage. She picked the latch open, a trick she'd learned from her days in the ICU when supply rooms were off limits. Inside, the room smelled faintly of antiseptic and something metallic. The equipment was gone, but a faint outline on the wall caught her eye, a square shape, slightly darker than the rest. She rubbed it with her sleeve. Beneath the paint, faint lettering appeared, IDOS, Subject 4M. Her stomach dropped. On the floor, tucked under a cabinet, she found something wedged in the dust, a single paper chart, half frozen, edges warped by water damage. The name on it made her blood run cold. Moran, Elise, Subject 4M. A chill swept over her that had nothing to do with the temperature. The next morning, she sat at her desk, the chart open before her. It contained fragmented notes, most illegible, but one line was clear, written in Elise's neat handwriting. If you find this, it means I remembered too much. Lena leaned back, staring at the words. Elise Moran wasn't just a missing person anymore. She was patient zero. March 2016, Denver General Hospital. The hallway outside the psych wing was too quiet. Hospitals were never silent, they breathed, hummed, whispered through air vents and cardiac monitors, but here, the air felt intentionally still, like someone had muted the world. Detective Lena Price flashed her badge at the on-duty nurse and slipped past the double doors. She wasn't technically cleared for this area, but the hospital administrators had stopped questioning her visits weeks ago. The case of Dr. Elise Moran had gone from a missing persons investigation to something colder, stranger, and increasingly political. In her gloved hand, she held the warped medical chart she'd found in the old storage room, Moran, Elise, Subject 4M. Every night she stared at it under a lamp, tracing the half-erased handwriting. The words, "if you find this, it means I remembered too much," looped in her mind like a confession and a curse. She wasn't sure what "remembered too much" meant, but the answers were somewhere inside this hospital. And she planned to find them. Lena made her way to the psychiatric observation ward, where only authorized researchers and clinicians could enter. The automatic doors hissed open, releasing a faint scent of antiseptic and lemon cleanser. A man in a white coat looked up from his desk, early 40s, hollow-eyed, clearly exhausted. His badge read Dr. Aaron Holbrook. "You shouldn't be here," he said, lowering his voice. "Neither should a classified research trial," Lena replied evenly. "Relax. I'm not here to arrest anyone. I just want the truth." He hesitated, then motioned her toward his office. "If Keller finds out?" "Keller's already lying to me," she said. "You might as well balance the scales." Holbrook sighed. "You have no idea what you're digging into, Detective. Elise Moran is, a brilliant clinician. But she got involved in something way above her pay grade. We all did." He opened a locked drawer and pulled out a faded folder stamped "Confidential, IDOS Neuroscience Collaborative." "The IDOS project started as trauma therapy," he explained. "A non-invasive neurostimulation technique meant to isolate and suppress traumatic memory clusters in soldiers with severe PTSD. Keller was the lead researcher. Elise joined as his clinical coordinator." Lena leaned forward. "Suppress memory clusters? As in, erase them?" Holbrook rubbed his temples. "In theory, no. We were just disrupting the neural reconsolidation pathway, pausing memory retrieval long enough to reduce emotional distress. But Keller started pushing for permanence. He said we could make pain optional." Elise disagreed. She said memory, even painful memory, is part of identity. "What happened?" "She started documenting everything," Holbrook said quietly. "Patient reactions, anomalies, even Keller's off-protocol sessions. She was convinced he was using unauthorized subjects." Lena frowned. "Unauthorized how?" He hesitated. "Patients who didn't consent. Soldiers transferred from a military psych unit. Some were unconscious when the trials began." "Jesus." Holbrook nodded grimly. When Elise confronted him, he told her to back off. 2 days later, the data disappeared from the servers. The next morning, she was gone. Later that afternoon, Lena sat alone in the hospital archive room, flipping through old personnel rosters. Elise's name appeared in multiple departments, ER, neuropsychiatry, and research support, but the electronic records after January 2016 were corrupted. Even IT couldn't recover them. It wasn't a glitch. It was a scrub. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling tiles. Why erase her? A faint creak interrupted her thoughts. She looked toward the door. "Detective Price," a voice said smoothly. Dr. Keller stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, smile too sharp. "Working late?" "Always," Lena said without turning. "You wouldn't happen to know who deleted 6 months of hospital data, would you?" He stepped closer, his shoes whispering against the tile. "Detective, you're treading into federal territory. Those files were part of a Defense Health Agency collaboration. You're not authorized to." She spun her chair to face him. "Don't patronize me, Keller. I know about the soldiers. The mind suppression experiments." Elise didn't vanish, she was silenced. He chuckled softly. "You've been talking to Holbrook, I see. You should be careful which ghosts you listen to. People who dig too deep into trauma often start creating patterns that aren't there." Lena met his gaze, cold and steady. "You think I'm imagining her?" "I think," Keller said, his tone silky, "you're becoming exactly what you accuse me of being, obsessed." He turned and left, his white coat trailing like a flag of arrogance. Lena exhaled slowly. The man was unflappable, but not untouchable. She could feel the lie radiating from him. That night, she drove through the empty streets toward Elise's old apartment. It had been cleared months ago, but she had obtained a key from the landlord under the pretext of reviewing evidence. The place smelled of dust and lavender cleaner. The furniture was gone, but the walls were lined with faint square shadows where photos once hung. On the kitchen counter sat an old corkboard, still there, somehow overlooked during the investigation. A few yellowed papers were pinned in place, shift schedules, patient notes, and a hand-drawn web of names and arrows connecting Keller, IDOS, and a company called Harthill Defense Systems. In the center, circled 3 times in red ink, was one word, forgetting. Tucked behind a corner of the board was a small digital recorder. Lena's pulse spiked. She pressed play. The recording crackled with static, then Elise's voice came through, calm, precise, but trembling beneath the surface. Day 31. Keller authorized another session with subject 409. The patient recognizes me now, calls me by name, though I never gave it. His memories aren't random. They're transferred. He dreams about procedures he couldn't have experienced. It's as if he's remembering mine. A pause. I think Keller's experimenting on me. Static swallowed the rest. Lena stood motionless, the device trembling in her hand. The idea was insane, but the evidence kept circling back to the same impossible point. Elise hadn't just discovered something unethical, she'd become part of it. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of the trance. Unknown number. Text, stop listening. Her stomach dropped. The apartment light flickered once, then went dark. The next morning, Keller filed a formal complaint to hospital administration claiming Detective Price was obstructing research and compromising security. But by then, she was already on her way to Boulder, to the headquarters of Eidos Therapeutics, the company Elise had circled in red. Whatever they were hiding, it was bigger than one missing doctor. And far more dangerous. Boulder County, Colorado, April 2022. The storm had passed long ago, but its shadow lingered. Detective Lena Price hadn't thought about the Moran case in years, not actively, at least. It was the one file she could never close, the one that sat in the back of her mind like a faint echo she couldn't unhear. She'd left the Denver PD in 2019, after her request to reopen the investigation was denied, for lack of new evidence. These days she taught criminal psychology at the University of Colorado, lecturing about missing persons, cognitive bias, and how truth can disappear faster than a body in snow. And yet, even now, she kept the stethoscope from the evidence box, polished, cold, engraved Elise Moran, PAC, on her desk. A reminder that some answers freeze before you can reach them. That morning, her phone rang. The number flashed as Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office. She hesitated before answering. Price. Detective Price? The voice was deep, uncertain. You're listed as the contact for an open missing person case, Dr. Elise Moran? Lena sat up straight. I was. Why? There was a pause. Then the sheriff said quietly, I think we found her. The monastery lay at the edge of the Rockies, an hour west of Golden, a stone compound that looked carved from the mountain itself. Snow still clung stubbornly to the eaves, though it was late spring. When Lena arrived, the air was thinner, quieter. Bells tolled faintly in the distance. A monk met her at the gate, his face weathered and kind. You came for the woman, he said simply. She arrived years ago, during a great storm. We thought she would die. Does she know who she is? Lena asked. She remembers medicine. The body. The pulse of the heart. He looked at her with strange compassion. But the rest of her past, she says it feels like a dream she's not supposed to wake from. Lena's stomach tightened. Take me to her. They crossed a courtyard filled with wind chimes and melting ice. Inside a small infirmary, sunlight filtered through arched windows. A woman sat by the fire, dressed in simple gray robes, reading a medical text. When she turned, Lena's breath caught. It was her. Older, thinner, hair streaked with silver, but unmistakably Elise Moran. Elise, Lena said softly. The woman frowned slightly, as if tasting the name for the first time. They call me Sister Elise here. Lena stepped closer. Do you know who I am? A flicker of recognition passed behind her eyes, faint, fleeting. You look familiar. I'm Lena Price. I've been looking for you for 6 years. Elise's hands trembled. 6 years? Lena nodded. You disappeared during a blizzard in 2016. Everyone thought you were dead. Elise looked down at the floor, then said quietly, perhaps I was. They sat together by the fire. Lena told her everything she could, the search, the frozen car, the erased files, the sealed lab. Elise listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When Lena finished, Elise whispered, I remember flashes. Cold. Light. A machine humming, and a voice saying, you won't remember any of this. Keller? Lena asked. Elise flinched. That name, yes. He was angry. Not at me, at the work. Something had gone wrong. I think I was the last trial. The last trial? She nodded slowly. They said it was a treatment, for trauma, for pain. But the sessions became invasive. I would wake up not knowing where I'd been. Then I started to forget my own research. My own name. The only thing I remember clearly is a phrase I wrote over and over in my notes. What phrase? She turned to Lena, voice trembling. The chart is frozen. Lena felt a chill. You said that to a patient before you vanished. I did? You did. He repeated it to you, just before you disappeared. Elise pressed her fingers to her temples, eyes squeezed shut. It's like trying to remember through glass. Everything is cold, blurred. Lena hesitated. Elise, I found your file. It listed you as subject 4M. Keller's note said you underwent the same procedure as your patients. Elise looked at her sharply. Then that means I volunteered. No, Lena said firmly. You were trying to expose them. Keller and IDOS Therapeutics. They were experimenting on people. But maybe I agreed to it, Elise interrupted. If I believed the therapy could erase pain, maybe I wanted to erase my own. My brother's death. The guilt. Lena stared at her. You think you chose this? I don't know, Elise said, almost pleading. But part of me wonders if forgetting was a mercy. Later, as dusk fell over the mountains, the monastery bell tolled again. Lena stood outside, phone pressed to her ear. Denver PD, said the voice on the line. Detective Ramos. It's Price. I'm no longer active duty, but I found her. Elise Moran. She's alive. Silence, then a long exhale. Alive? Jesus. Where? A monastery in Clear Creek County. She's suffering from selective amnesia, but she remembers fragments about the IDOS project. IDOS? Ramos repeated. You're not going to believe this, but that name just came up again. A whistleblower from a biotech firm in Boulder dropped a bunch of encrypted files on a journalist last week. They reference experimental memory suppression, Department of Defense contracts, Keller's name, everything. Lena's pulse quickened. So it's real. Real enough that the Fed sealed the case within hours. They're calling it national security. Of course they were. Lena glanced back through the window. Elise sat by the fire, staring at her reflection in the glass as if trying to remember which face was hers. Keep me posted, Lena said, hanging up. That night, a monk approached Lena as she prepared to leave. Sister Elise asked me to give you this. He handed her a sealed envelope, the paper brittle with age. Inside was a single page, a patient chart. The name field read Cole, John, subject 409. But beneath it, written in Elise's handwriting, was a note. He remembers me. He remembers my memories. And below that, a single, shaky line. If I forget again, remind me, I wasn't just the doctor. I was the experiment. Lena folded the paper carefully and looked back toward the monastery's candlelit windows. The blizzard had ended, but the storm inside Elise Moran had only begun to thaw. Denver, Colorado, May 2022. The first time Elise Moran saw her name typed on an official form again, she stared at it for nearly a full minute, as if the letters themselves were foreign. Name, Moran, Elise. Status, found alive, pending evaluation. Strange, she murmured, tracing the letters with her fingertip. I know that's me, but it feels like reading someone else's obituary. Detective Lena Price stood across the table, watching her. They sat in a quiet room inside Denver General, the same hospital Elise had vanished from 6 years earlier. Outside, the city buzzed as if nothing unusual had happened, but the building itself carried the weight of ghosts. I want to help you recover your memory, Lena said carefully, but only if you're ready. Elise smiled faintly. You don't have to be gentle with me, detective. I used to run trauma debriefings for paramedics. I've seen what forgetting can do. It's a strange mercy. She looked around the room, sterile walls, flickering fluorescent light. This place smells the same. Antiseptic and fear. Lena hesitated. Do you remember room 409? Elise's hand twitched. That number feels sharp. Like a knife I used to know. Lena opened a folder and slid a page across the table. We found this at the monastery, among your things. It's a patient chart. Elise picked it up, eyes scanning the faded ink. Her breath caught. Cole, John, subject 409. Procedure date, January 5, 2016. Operator, E. Moran, PAC. She flipped it over and found her own handwriting scrawled across the back. He remembers me. He remembers my memories. The pen trembled in her hand. This is mine. I wrote this. Do you know what it means? Lena asked. Elise frowned, thinking. Keller was obsessed with memory mapping, the idea that trauma could be isolated like a virus and cut out. But he wasn't just removing memories, he was trying to transfer them. To rewrite identity. To overwrite pain with obedience. Lena leaned forward. So, he remembers my memories means. That my memories were implanted in someone else, Elise whispered. Or worse, that his were implanted in me. They spent the next week together, piecing fragments of Elise's life back into shape. Each new memory she recovered seemed to thaw something frozen inside her, but it came with tremors, nightmares, flashes of cold light, the faint hum of a machine she couldn't quite see. One night, as she drifted off in her hospital bed, she heard a voice, soft, familiar, male. You're safe now, Elise. You won't remember any of this. She woke screaming. Lena was there in seconds. What happened? Elise clutched her head. I heard him. Keller. He said I wouldn't remember. Lena exhaled slowly. Then you're remembering correctly. The next day, Lena arranged a private meeting with Dr. Maya Chen, the junior resident who had first leaked information about Project IDOS. They met in a downtown cafe, both wearing sunglasses like they were extras in a bad spy movie. Maya slid a flash drive across the table. I shouldn't have this. But you didn't get it from me. What is it? Internal IDOS correspondence. Someone in IT backed up Keller's files before they were erased. There's video. Lena frowned. Video of what? Maya hesitated. Of the trials. And one of the subjects is Elise. That night, Lena and Elise sat together in a darkened office, the glow of the monitor painting both their faces pale. The file opened with a hospital timestamp, January 5, 2016, 22 hours 47 minutes and 3 seconds. Elise's breath hitched as the footage began. She was there, strapped to a reclined chair, electrodes running from her scalp to a humming console. Keller stood beside her, expression calm, surgical. Session 7, he said into a recorder. Subject 4M demonstrates progressive destabilization of self-referential memory. Initiating final phase of cognitive isolation. He turned toward the camera, speaking like a man narrating a science documentary. She insists on continuing, claiming informed consent. In truth, she's terrified. That fear, I believe, is the final key, the emotional catalyst that allows the neural separation to finalize. On screen, Elise, or the version of her 6 years younger, began to tremble. You can't erase what defines me, she said weakly. I know what you're doing. Keller smiled faintly. You'll thank me later. Then he pressed a button. A low hum filled the speakers, growing louder, sharper. Elise's body arched once, and then went still. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. When the feed cut, the room went dead silent. Elise was shaking. He did it. He erased me. Lena closed the laptop slowly. He erased your memories, Elise. Not you. Elise looked up, tears glinting. Then who am I now? The doctor, or the experiment? The following morning, Lena received a call from IDOS Therapeutics' legal office. Detective Price, said the clipped voice on the other end, you're in possession of proprietary materials that fall under federal confidentiality agreements. We strongly advise you return all data before it's escalated. Escalated to what? Lena asked. To a level you can't control. The line went dead. She turned to Elise, who had been listening from the corner of the room. They're scared, Lena said. That means we're close. Elise nodded slowly. Then let's make them afraid for real. 2 days later, they drove to the Colorado State Medical Archives, a drab concrete building that smelled of mildew and bureaucracy. Elise insisted they search for original research submissions from 2015, proposals Keller had filed under university grant programs before the project went private. The archivist frowned when she typed the name. Dr. Graham Keller, nothing current, but, she paused. There's a sealed folder marked classified retrieval only. Code E409. Lena exchanged a look with Elise. Can you show us the request log? The archivist hesitated. Only once before. 6 months ago. Someone from IDOS signed it out under an alias. They returned it the next day. Who? The archivist checked the signature line. A Dr. Moran, Elise. Elise went pale. That's impossible. Apparently not, Lena said quietly. Elise pressed her hand to her chest. Then I came back here before. I tried to recover something. I just don't remember. What was in that folder? The archivist lowered her voice. A set of encrypted drives. Handwritten notes. Something called the Frozen Chart. Elise's eyes widened. That was my title. My research journal. Lena's pulse quickened. Where is it now? The archivist hesitated. It's missing. That night, Elise dreamed again, this time not of snow, but of light. She stood in a lab filled with humming machines, her reflection staring back from mirrored glass. Keller's voice whispered from somewhere unseen. If you remember, you'll die. Then I'll die remembering, she said aloud. When she awoke, the words were still on her lips. By morning, Lena's inbox had exploded with headlines. Whistleblower leaks data, IDOS therapeutics linked to covert memory experiments. Defense contractors deny involvement in illegal neuromod trials. Dr. Graham Keller missing after federal raid. The story had broken wide open. But as Lena scrolled through the attached files, one image stopped her cold, a scanned document labeled the Frozen Chart, E. Moran. At the bottom, Elise's signature. And under, consent statement, a single handwritten line. I understand that memory is fragile. To preserve truth, I may need to forget it. Lena looked up from the screen, her chest tight. Elise, she whispered, what did you do? Denver, Colorado, June 2022. It was 3:17 a.m. when Elise Moran jolted awake, heart hammering against her ribs. She wasn't in the hospital. She wasn't at the monastery. She was in Lena Price's spare bedroom, surrounded by unpacked boxes and the hum of a refrigerator in the next room. And she wasn't alone. At first, she thought it was the wind against the window. But then she heard it again, the soft click of a phone camera. She froze. Elise, came Lena's voice from the hall. You okay? The sound stopped instantly. Elise swung her legs off the bed, flipping on the lamp. The room was empty, except for a faint reflection of movement in the window. Someone was out there, she said, voice shaking. Lena burst in, gun drawn. She darted to the window and yanked it open. Nothing. Just the night air and the quiet hum of the city below. But when Lena turned, she saw Elise holding something, a small metal tag, wedged in the window frame. Property of IDOS Therapeutics, access level A. They looked at each other. They found us, Lena said. The next morning, Elise couldn't sit still. They're trying to retrieve me, she said. I'm not supposed to exist outside their lab. They can't touch you now, Lena replied, though her voice was less certain than she wanted it to be. The feds raided IDOS. Keller's missing. The project's exposed. Elise shook her head. You don't understand. Keller isn't gone. He's hiding, or worse, someone's hiding him. He was never the head of the snake. He was just the face. Lena frowned. Then who's behind it? Elise hesitated. The Department of Defense's Cognitive Research Division, CRD. They funded the experiments through shell grants. IDOS was the front. So this wasn't just about therapy. No, Elise said quietly. It was about weaponizing memory, creating soldiers who could forget trauma, or worse, who could be rewritten entirely. Lena leaned back, the reality of it settling in like a lead weight. You're saying you helped build a machine that rewires people's minds? I thought I was helping people heal, Elise said bitterly. I didn't realize I was building a factory. They drove to an abandoned IDOS facility outside Golden, the last location Keller had used before the raid. The gates hung open, the security cameras lifeless. Inside, the air smelled of dust, copper, and something faintly electrical. Elise walked slowly down the corridor, her footsteps echoing against sterile tile. I've been here, she whispered. More than once. They entered a laboratory lined with shattered glass and overturned equipment. On one wall, a cracked mirror reflected them both, Elise in plain clothes, Lena in her worn leather jacket. This is where the transfer sessions took place, Elise said. The patient sat there. She pointed to a dented reclined chair, the straps still dangling. And I sat here. Lena approached a metal cabinet and pried it open. Inside were labeled vials and folders, yellowing with age. Subject 409, she read aloud. John Cole. Elise's eyes widened. He was the patient who kept repeating my words. The chart is frozen. Lena flipped through the file. Vitals normal. Neurological stability, wait. She stopped at a line halfway down the page. Final test results, memory bridge successful. Transference complete. Elise's breath hitched. Transference complete? That means he received my neural data. My memories. And if that's true, Lena said slowly, then John Cole might remember things you don't. They tracked him down through a chain of nursing home records. John Cole had been listed as a nonverbal long-term psychiatric patient since 2017, transferred between state facilities before being quietly moved to a private care center owned by, of course, an IDOS subsidiary. When they arrived, the receptionist smiled politely. Mr. Cole? Room 212. He doesn't talk much, I'm afraid. Elise's pulse was a drumbeat as they entered the room. The man in the bed looked older, frilier, his skin pale against the sheets. Electrodes dotted his scalp, old scars beneath them. But when he opened his eyes and saw Elise, something flickered there. Recognition. She stepped closer. John? He blinked slowly. Dr. Moran. Lena stiffened. Elise's throat tightened. You, remember me? His voice was thin, strained. I remember being you. The air went still. Elise sank into the chair beside him. What do you mean? He lifted a trembling hand, gesturing toward his head. Flashes. Blue light. A cold hum. You standing above me, crying. Then, nothing. And when I woke up, I knew things, your childhood, your brother, your handwriting. I thought I was losing my mind. Elise's eyes filled with tears. They copied me into you. They tried to overwrite me, he said weakly. But it didn't take completely. Sometimes I see your memories like someone else's dreams. Lena stepped forward. John, did Keller ever contact you after that? His eyes darted to the corner of the room, to a small black dome camera mounted on the ceiling. He never needed to, he whispered. He watched me. Elise followed his gaze. The light on the camera was blinking. Lena pulled her gun. We're leaving. Now. Back in the car, Elise stared out the window, her mind racing. They were monitoring him remotely, she said. That means Keller's still active, and he's watching who visits his subjects. Then we just made his watch list, Lena muttered. Elise turned toward her. He's trying to complete the bridge. If my memories live inside Cole, he'll try to retrieve them, to reconstruct the experiment. You mean, he wants you back? Elise nodded. He's obsessed with his data. And I'm his missing file. That night, a new file appeared in Lena's encrypted email, no sender, no traceable metadata. Just a single attachment named mind_factory_log_8. When they opened it, the screen filled with static, then a grainy image of Keller, his eyes hollow, his voice calm. If you're seeing this, Elise, then the machine worked, at least partially. You were always the perfect subject because you believed in it. Memory isn't truth. It's malleable. Like ice. And when it melts, it doesn't disappear, it changes shape. He leaned closer to the camera, smiling faintly. You can't destroy what we built. Because you are what we built. Elise stared at the screen, her face white. He's not wrong, she whispered. My neural data might still exist, in their servers, in their backups, maybe even in me. Lena frowned. So what do we do? Elise took a deep breath. We melt the ice. We break the machine. By morning, she had a plan. They would find the last operating IDOS satellite lab, codenamed the Mind Factory, rumored to be hidden under an abandoned mining site in the Rockies. It was dangerous. Possibly suicidal. But Elise smiled for the first time since she'd been found. Lena, she said, I spent 6 years trapped in a mine that wasn't mine. If I can finally burn down the place that built it, I'll call that living. Lena tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Then let's go melt your chart, doctor. They drove into the mountains, the storm clouds gathering once more. Somewhere ahead, the factory waited, humming, patient, alive. Rocky Mountains, Colorado, June 2022. By dawn, the road had vanished behind a wall of white. The mountain air turned razor-cold as Lena Price's Jeep crawled along the winding dirt path, tires crunching through early summer snow. They had followed the coordinates hidden in the mine factory log, Keller's message, buried in code Elise herself had written years ago. 39 degrees, 47 minutes north, Lena read from the GPS. It should be right below us. Elise pressed her palm to the fogged window, eyes scanning the snow-dusted cliffs. They built it inside a decommissioned silver mine, she said. No one would question the power usage out here. The generators would mask the neural resonance equipment. Of course they would, Lena muttered. A secret brain lab inside a mountain. Very subtle. Elise smiled faintly. You're handling this better than most detectives would. I stopped being most detectives the day I found a stethoscope frozen in the snow, Lena said, tapping the wheel. Elise looked down at her lap. That was the day I disappeared. That was the day they stole you. They parked at the base of a steep incline, where the remnants of an old mining shack sagged under the snow. Faded warning signs read restricted area, federal property. Inside, the floor was layered in dust. Lena found a rusted hatch half buried under old tarps. She tugged the lever, and a metallic hiss filled the room. Cold, sterile air rose from the darkness below. Welcome to the factory, Elise whispered. They descended into a concrete tunnel illuminated by flickering emergency lights. The hum of machinery echoed faintly through the air, rhythmic, steady, alive. At the end of the tunnel stood a metal door with a retinal scanner. The panel blinked red. Elise hesitated. If Keller's still running remote access, this scan might alert him. Lena stepped forward. Then we make it quick. Elise leaned in, the scanner sweeping her eye. The light turned green. The door slid open with a slow hiss. Inside was the future, or the wreckage of one. Rows of black consoles lined the walls, cables coiling across the floor like roots. Transparent tanks filled with suspended neural gel pulsed with a faint blue light. Screens flickered with brainwave patterns, digital signatures, and one repeating word. Recall protocol, armed. Elise's heart stopped. He activated it. What does that mean? Lena asked. It means Keller's trying to restore every memory fragment from every subject, forcibly. If it completes, their minds could collapse. Lena scanned the screens. How many subjects? Elise's voice cracked. Hundreds. They moved deeper into the lab. A massive cylindrical chamber dominated the center, a machine built like an MRI, but encased in mirrored glass. Wires fed into a cluster of servers glowing in eerie blue. This is the core, Elise said. The cognitive bridge unit. Lena pointed to a small terminal flashing with warnings. It's running an upload. To where? Elise typed rapidly. Encrypted cloud backup. They're transferring the neural maps. If he can't control the minds physically, he'll preserve them digitally. So he's uploading consciousness? Elise didn't answer right away. He's trying to make memory immortal. Lena swore softly. That's not science. That's madness. Elise smiled sadly. Sometimes they're the same thing. A sudden hiss broke the silence. The far door slid open. Two figures in black tactical suits entered, IDOS insignia on their shoulders. One of them held a tablet. Dr. Moran, he said flatly. You've been recalled. Lena stepped between them. She's not going anywhere. The man ignored her, eyes fixed on Elise. You belong to the project? Your data is incomplete. I'm not data, Elise said coldly. I'm the mistake you couldn't delete. He smiled faintly. Keller wants you back online. He's waiting. At that, Elise froze. He's alive? The man nodded. And he's watching. Before Lena could react, the ceiling speakers crackled to life, and Keller's voice filled the room. You always were too curious, Elise. I warned you that truth could break a mind. But you insisted on remembering. Keller, Lena shouted. You're finished. The world knows. He chuckled. Oh, Detective Price. You think exposure matters? The moment they called it national security, it became untouchable. You'll be silenced, and she'll be restored. Elise's jaw tightened. You erased me once. You won't do it again. On the contrary, Keller said. You built the recall protocol yourself. You just never understood its purpose. Alarms blared. The chamber lit up with blue light. Lines of code filled the screens. Initiating full recall. Elise grabbed Lena's wrist. He's pulling my neural data from the cloud, into the core. So shut it down. I can't. It's hardwired to biometric authorization, mine and his. Then override it. Elise's eyes burned. That could fry the system, and my brain with it. Lena stared at her. If you don't, he'll erase everyone. Elise nodded slowly. Then we melt the ice. She sat at the console, fingers flying across the keyboard. Keller's voice echoed through the chamber. Don't be foolish, Elise. The mind can't survive without its roots. Then it's time to pull them out, she hissed. She entered an emergency override, frozen_chart/purge_all. The system hesitated, then screamed. Electricity arced across the chamber. The tanks began to burst one by one, the neural gel splashing against the floor like liquid glass. Lena pulled her back. It's over. But Elise's hand hovered over the control panel, eyes fixed on a final prompt, delete core memory source? She whispered, if I do this, Keller dies, but so do I. Lena grabbed her shoulders. He's already taken your life once. Don't let him take it again. Elise looked at her, then pressed the button. The lights flared. The chamber erupted in a cascade of blue fire. When Lena woke, the world was smoke and silence. Sparks rained from the ceiling. She staggered to her feet, coughing. Elise. No answer. Through the haze, she saw a figure kneeling beside the shattered core. Elise, alive, barely. Her hands were shaking, her skin streaked with ash. Lena ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. You did it. The system's down. Elise looked up, her pupils dilated, her voice a whisper. Did I? Lena frowned. What do you mean? Elise smiled faintly. I remember everything now. But I'm not sure it's me who's remembering. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft, silent, endless. As Lena helped Elise toward the jeep, a faint blue glow flickered from a broken console behind them. On its cracked screen, a single line appeared. Recall complete. Welcome back, Dr. Moran. Denver, Colorado, August 2022. The summer heat had finally melted the last of the mountain snow, but Elise Moran still felt the chill of winter somewhere deep inside her bones. It had been 6 weeks since the explosion at the IDOS facility. The media called it a power grid accident. The government called it a containment breach. Only Lena Price and Elise knew what it truly was. The night science tried to rewrite the human soul. Now, Denver General was bright again. The smell of antiseptic and coffee filled the halls, the usual rhythm of hospital life restored. Yet every sound, every beep, every echo of a gurney wheel, reminded Elise of the hum of that machine. She sat in a small recovery room, staring out the window as the morning sun spilled across the city skyline. Her left hand trembled faintly. The neurologist said it was residual cortical stress. Elise knew better. It was memory trying to find its balance again. Lena entered, holding 2 coffees. You look better. Elise smiled weakly. That's a very generous lie. Detective's observation, Lena said, handing her a cup. Not a lie. You have color again. Color, Elise murmured. I forgot how that felt. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the hum of downtown traffic was comforting, almost ordinary. So, Lena said, breaking the quiet, the bureau's shutting down what's left of IDOS. The labs are sealed. Every digital trace of Project Frozen chart, gone. Elise didn't look away from the window. Except the traces inside my head. Lena studied her. You've been remembering more? Elise nodded slowly. Everything. The patients. The tests. The moment Keller flipped the switch. I remember his face when the first memory transfer worked. He said, we're gods now. She paused. He believed that. Lena leaned back, exhaling. And what about you? What do you believe? Elise smiled faintly. That the brain is a dangerous place to hide secrets. Later that day, they were escorted to a private briefing room at the Denver field office. 2 federal agents sat across from them, one polite, one stone-faced. Agent Hughes cleared his throat. Dr. Moran, thank you for your cooperation. We've recovered fragments from the destroyed IDOS servers. The recall protocol's data structure appears to have been wiped clean. Appears? Lena repeated sharply. Mostly, Hughes admitted. There's one anomaly, an encrypted residual pattern embedded in the metadata. It's dormant, but, he hesitated. It's tagged with your signature, Doctor. Elise blinked. My signature? He turned a laptop toward her. On the screen glowed a faint data imprint labeled EAMROOT. It's a mirror copy of your neural map, Hughes said. A backup. Created automatically during the recall sequence. Lena stiffened. Are you saying her mind was cloned? Not entirely. Think of it as an echo. A neural fingerprint. Elise stared at the screen, her voice a whisper. Then Keller succeeded. The second agent leaned forward. We need to know if that file is dangerous. Elise's eyes darkened. Everything about memory is dangerous when it belongs to the wrong hands. That night, Elise and Lena walked along the Platte River. The water moved slow and dark beneath the streetlights. Elise stopped at the railing, her reflection rippling across the surface. When I was younger, she said, I used to think forgetting was weakness. That memory made us who we are. And now? Lena asked. Now I think memory's a cage. Sometimes it's better to let it melt. Lena turned to her. You didn't just destroy Keller's system, did you? Elise hesitated. No. I rerouted it first. Rerouted? I couldn't risk Keller having a backup. So I transferred the data to a secure neural lock, a recursive file that only responds to my biological signature. If anyone tries to open it, it deletes itself. Lena blinked. You turned your brain into a password? Elise smiled thinly. I suppose I did. So it's safe? For now. Lena studied her face, the calm that had replaced the confusion, the steadiness that came from surviving madness. Elise, she said softly, you could go back to medicine. Teach, research, start over. Elise shook her head. You can't start over when your past still lives in someone else's head. A week later, a package arrived at Lena's apartment, no return address. Inside was a single envelope, sealed with wax. She unfolded the letter. Lena. If you're reading this, it means I've left Denver. The monastery has offered me a position teaching basic medicine to new brothers, no electricity, no data, no machines. I think that's best. I remember everything now, and yet, I've never been less certain who I am. I used to believe memory was identity, but maybe memory is just the story we tell ourselves so we can keep living. If the government ever asks about the backup, tell them it was destroyed in the explosion. Don't look for me. The less you remember, the safer you'll be. Thank you for reminding me I was human. E.M. Lena folded the letter slowly, staring out the window at the fading daylight. She smiled faintly. You always did like your metaphors frozen, Doctor. 6 months later. A remote monastery in the Rockies. Snow drifted in slow spirals over the stone courtyard. Inside the chapel, monks chanted softly, the air thick with candle smoke. Elise sat at a wooden desk, sketching in a worn notebook. She paused, staring at a page of complex diagrams, neurons, synapses, fragments of an algorithm. She didn't remember drawing them. From the corner of the room, a small device blinked faintly under the candlelight, a cracked, half-buried tablet, screen fractured but still alive. Across it, a single message pulsed in blue text. EAMROOT, sequence reactivation detected. Elise frowned. The candles flickered. For a brief moment, she heard Keller's voice echo in the back of her mind, distant, distorted, but unmistakable. You can melt the ice, Elise, but water always finds its shape again. Her pencil fell from her hand. She stared at the tablet, then slowly closed the notebook. Outside, the snow began to fall harder, swallowing the sound of the wind. And somewhere deep in the mountain, unseen and silent, a machine hummed back to life.